Hey folks, it's Knight here again with the third installment of Overlooked Champions. Next up, Morningstar. With the buff to Guillotine, I thought this was the perfect time to revisit Morningstar, a formerly beloved mystic powerhouse that's gone unheralded and unmentioned in recent years. So I figured, let's talk about it. She has a very interesting history, but instead of me talking about it, let's let Kabam talk.
The tome in your possession documents the long history of the guillotine, of which you are the most recent incarnation. The blood sword belonged to many. Some used it for good, many more for evil. Such was the case of Queen Hassan of Languria, a tyrant who used the mystical powers of the sword to subjugate her own people. So many died under her evil regime that her own subjects turned against her, taking her castle by storm. The rebels stole the queen's sword and locked her in one of her own cursed torture devices. And there she remained, until an ancient evil took notice.
Mighty Queen, they have stolen your crown, your beloved blade. But I can help you walk free again, give you the tools for your just revenge. All I want in return is a small tribute. Do we have a deal?
Now we know a little bit about the history. Now what do we do with her? The issues have always been difficult to use due to ramp up. Well, one of her synergy partners, in fact a few of them, have already been buffed. So maybe that's no longer an issue. So let's just take a deep dive into her abilities and see what she can do. So in terms of abilities, it's not a better spot to go to than Aunt May. So let's just take a look. I mean, most of her base stats are pretty anemic, but her kit, her abilities underneath, make up by far these deficiencies. So you can see her tags and whatnot. Now, her SIG ability is very important for the character. She copies buffs. So basically, if the opponent has a Fury buff, a Regen buff, a Power Game buff, Guillotine will get one of her own, and the opponent suffers reduced potency based on Guillotine SIG level. So, very interesting. So, let's take another look at some of her abilities. She's immune to bleed. Very nice. But she has a persistent mechanic. So the number of souls she gets per fight, she unlocks a greater level of utility and power. So she starts with one soul automatically. But with synergies, especially with Guillotine, she starts with 2. So one soul she'll generate when bleed when struck. 2, she gets an unstoppable buff on her special 1. As with 3, her special 2 becomes unblockable. 4, she gets enhanced energy resistance and 50% perfect block. 5, lifesteal, and that's really nice. These are amazing abilities, and they, again, it's a ramp up, and that's usually the knock on her. but we'll talk about that a little bit later. The heavy attacks, she gets a power gain buff that's tied to the numbers of souls she has. It's a very small power gain, but it ramps up a little bit and gets a little bit better the greater number of souls she has via her persistent mechanic. So that's a very nice to have. Now let's talk about her special attacks. Her special 1 deals bonus energy damage per captured soul. Also, if you happen to have 2 or more, you get an unstoppable buff, which gives you an in on a number of different difficult nodes. So, if you're stun immune and whatnot, it's difficult to get an in. Well, guess what? This attack will allow that by giving you an unstoppable buff. So you'll create your own in. Or in map 7 in AQ, this also for nodes that you must have an unstoppable buff to do damage. Guess what? You'll have that via this. Now, special attack 2 is basically your nullifier. So 100% chance to nullify all buffs, and it deals bonus damage per buff active on the opponent. So again, this also becomes unblockable 3 souls and up. So very nice to have. Okay. And special 3, that's how you capture the soul. So you hit this, and when you hit the special 3, you can now go forward to capture the soul. Now, if you end the fight with the special 3, you automatically get the soul. But if it's not enough to knock out the opponent, you have to go through a mini game in order to get the soul. So any damage to the opponent on this ticker, and the ticker starts at 50, and if he ticks up and gets to 100, I think it's 5 per hit, or damage actually. For each, just hitting into the block works, or hitting the opponent, that works. You get to 100, you get the soul. Okay, quickly, let's go through the synergies. Newly buffed Guillotine, her soul charges last 10 seconds longer, important for her. Morningstar, if she starts a fight with less than 2 souls, she gets 1. Great for ramping her up. The Soul Seeker, Mephisto gets a soul to start, Morningstar gets an extra bar, starts the fight with a bar power. Very nice for her. For Warrior Queens, Angela, recently buffed Angela gets her buffs last an additional 20% longer. Magic gets 500 rating points of critical damage, and 500 crit damage while Limbo is up. For Morningstar, her buffs last 20% longer. Very nice for her. Mystic Observation for Sentinel, and it's only for Sentinel, but it's for power locks against him. They're 50% less effective, and he gets 50% power each time a power lock expires when facing a Mystic champion. And Mystic Tyrants for Dr. Doom, of course, still works for Dr. Doom, but whenever he nullifies, he gets a burst of energy damage. And for the Shared Curse, I'm just skipping over Nemesis because we know what that one is. Shared Curse with Gilly 2099, 30% on degen damage. Guillotine gets 20% personal bleed ability, accuracy. Morningstar gets at least 300 points on crit damage per captured soul, which is nice. So these are really good synergies with really good champions. I mean, Mephisto, you can say what you want about him, but he's a very solid champ, and the others that I mentioned are very good champions. So let's move on. Now then, one of the knocks on this champion is basically the painful ramp up. But with the buff to guillotine, I would make the argument that having her along in your lineup isn't the worst thing. So with her on in your lineup, the ramp up isn't nearly as bad. In fact, I would argue her ramp up can be paralleled to that of Corvus, and I'm not saying that this is Corvus Unchained and this is a Corvus Fellowship. No, I would argue that at 5 souls, she's one of the best in the game. So why don't we take a look at ramping her up? So with Guillotine in the lineup, you can see immediately the number jumps for her persistent charge jumps to 2. So now, if she were to throw her special 1, generates an unstoppable buff, gets you in, and you notice she's copying Venom's buffs due to her awakened ability. And you can see on contact, because she has one persistent charge or greater, that being hit generates a bleed. So here's the mini game that I mentioned. So you have to get to 100 first, and any contact by either player increases or decreases. So you can see. Got to 100, got the soul. Does create a bit of risk to do it like this. And as you can see, with that third persistent charge, the special 2 is unblockable. Okay, now let's talk about being able to capture soul using the special 3 just to knock them out. So here we go. Okay, finishing blow. So let's see, do we get the soul? And we do. So just so you know, it can work that way. So fully ramped up, is it worth it? More than 4 souls, you get perfect block, energy resistance. 5, you get life steal. What type of champion do we have? I would argue a very good one, as you can see. So let's wrap this up. I'd like to summarize. Morningstar is still a really good champion. She may have gotten forgotten in a backdrop of champions like Dr. Doom, but a lot of champs have. But she still has a lot of value in the current meta of the game. Now, for her ramp up, it's not that bad. It's almost comparable to Corvus's, because Corvus, you still need about 3 fights to ramp him up. The same with Obsidian. Now, Morningstar, she does need a running buddy to help speed the ramp up process. But Guillotine isn't bad. In fact, the buff, she's not bad at all. So you're not losing anything bringing her along like you would have in the past. Now for the payoff, for Morningstar, the payoff, as you can see at 5 souls, is amazing. But along the way, you would get 3 souls in the first fight with the Guillotine synergy. So you're talking 2 more fights after that, and you're getting significant benefits along the way. So I don't believe that it's as brutal as it used to be, because we have been conditioned to have a Corvus, an Aegon, a Obsidian as ramp-up champions in the recent past. So the payoff is pretty good. The synergy partners are amazing, and yes, I like Mephisto. He's a very solid champion, and all the other champions are very good to excellent champions. So you're not losing anything there either. I believe that Morningstar deserves another look in your lineup. Not just for incursions. I know many of us use her, but I mean in EQ, AQ, among others. I believe that she has an important role to play and deserves another look. So hopefully I've been able to convince you to give Morningstar another try. As always, thank you for your time. Night out.